Thanks very much for having me today. You've heard from the consultants, you've heard from the software providers, and now you'll hear a perspective from a customer. So I'm a customer. So it was interesting having a look at the percentage of the people where they are in their journey, around 30% starting, 30% looking. That's actually consistent with what I'm seeing across Australia and New Zealand at the moment, which is quite surprising, considering that, typically Australia and New Zealanders are probably the earliest adopters of software generally in history. There's been a slower uptake or progression forward with this software, and I've got some opinions on it, and I'm sure you could get some questions. Right, just getting back to basics. What does technology do? It speeds up good and bad processes. Technology will expose unclear thinking and poor strategy, okay? And it highlights flaws in your current risk models and your compliance models. I think that's one of the reasons why you've got a lot of people hitting a pilot not going forward. That's just an opinion I've got. The good part of it, it provides a defined optimal path, and it gives us the ability to do things faster and deliver faster. Why do we use this technology? Okay, for me, these are the four areas why I use this technology. It improves my risk profile and compliance. Okay, with this technology, the robot or AI will deliver to what it's been told to do. So as long as it's well defined and tested, and when I say tested, you understand that the robot's going to deal with the happy path and hand off anything it doesn't understand back to a human being, it actually improves your risk and compliance. A robot doesn't have an opinion. A robot doesn't deviate from what it's been told to do. So unlike humans, we put opinions in, we have a bias, we have a bad day, we have a good day. Bots are just consistent. The most important reason why my organisation has got into this area is the customer experience, improving the customer experience. That's at the centre of everything we do. It's customer centre-led decision making. We're there to improve the customer experience, improve the way we interact with them. I was actually asked at a conference about 6 months ago, when has technology got too far? And I suppose my response to that is, if we're driving customers down to a connection with the organisation they don't want to go through. So automation's great for people who want to play with it, but you always need to be available to pick up the phone and speak to the customer as well. It doesn't mean that the technology doesn't make that more efficient as well. So it's all around that customer-led experience. Cost to serve, down. It works. It works, and it can't not work. When you look at your process design and your process, even if you've got a process where you look at the happy path's going to take 40% of the volume or take 40% of the average handle time out of the organisation, that's a good thing. Only being 40% is not a reason not to do it. And this is where I'll talk about later around process improvement after the automation to improve that throughput. Audit, it's fantastic from an audit point of view because, if you set your bots up correctly, and I'll talk about that in the next slide, you can actually have a look from a transactional point of view what your bots are doing through registers that it spits out after the effect, after what it's done, what's been successfully completed, what wasn't successfully completed. But it also, by having a robot go into your core systems facilitating, you can map what it's been doing in your systems as well, which I'll talk about around the way you put a robot in. Speed of innovation, you can do things a lot quicker. That's without doubt against traditional IT development. We've been able to turn around some processes in 2 to 3 days, where typically that would take weeks and weeks and weeks. So it does help with your speed. So I suppose when you're having a look at, from a process point of view, if you can't talk about benefits to the organisation and you can't talk about benefits to your customers across these 4 quadrants, you probably need to start thinking about that as a part of why you go through this automation by your processes. Right, what am I asking before development? Governance. Okay, so one of the most important things in an organisation, and James got asked the question around, should it be business-led or IT-led? I actually don't think it should be business-led or IT-led. It's got to be it's got to be owned by the organisation. It's got to be organisationally led. This type of technology is a team sport, okay? And if you don't have all the right players on the field, you're going to have problems, okay? Look, I come from an IT background, and I'm the first to admit IT have been slow to the business and haven't let the business drive innovation. And this is where this technology is fantastic. So it's understanding where you fit in that journey. This is a great technology for the business to drive the outcome. You need to be involved with IT as well. Where I sit in the organisation, I sit and report into our CFO. So I sit between the business and IT, and it's bringing that together. We can't be successful unless we've got buy-in from both. And people's roles and responsibilities are really important. So when we look at, even the simple process of putting an automated solution in, we'll go and follow the ITIL processes of the testing and change related processes. That's not to slow it down, it doesn't slow it down. And if that's slowing it down in your organisation, you haven't got the right level of buy-in from those areas. So for example, yesterday I got a phone call about a process that we just finished, and we finished it early, and we didn't want to wait next week to a cab to get it approved. So we raised a change request, saw the cab manager yesterday, it's approved, it went in this morning. So it doesn't mean that a process is in place should slow you down from getting there. It's that buy-in you have from the people in that. So when I start from governance, we have a fortnightly forum, and people in that forum, in that steering committee, is the CEO, the CFO, and his direct reports. And what we do, we have a look at what we've done in the last 2 weeks. And we've got a priority of what we're looking at. We've got a list of 144 processes that we've identified that we could automate. And we have prioritised them based on value to the customer and business value. And we start knocking them off. The importance of that forum is to make sure that there's no roadblocks. The other reason why that forum is really important, someone will come up with an idea and say, this is a better use case than the next one, and it has a better value. And so we can debate it there, and if need be, it moves in, and the other ones move down. So we keep it real, we keep it moving. But it's also to remove roadblocks to ensure. It's really important in this governance forum too, because we've got the CIO in this forum as well, is where does RPA sit in your landscape? So before we started, we went and presented to our Enterprise Architectural Review Board, and with the solution of what we're looking to do. And so we had the discussion across, where should we be using this technology? So the debate with the application teams were, do they integrate or do we use this technology? So now we're having really good, healthy discussions, what's best for the organisation. So it may be a tactical decision, yes, we'll use this technology because integration will take too long, but we will eventually go to that integration path. So we can still get the wins and wait for the strategic solution. Or if you're dealing with a lot of your old legacy systems that you're not going to invest in integration type work, that becomes now your strategic view on it. But it's having those discussions and getting that acceptance, and that helps you path forward. Now the business drive it. How we got 144 use cases, because when I first started the organisation, I started doing workshops around the different business units. And they came in hand over fist of all the stuff that they hate doing, the high volume, boring, monotonous. So by giving them a structure and a framework of helping me help them around, define the process for me, right? Define, what decisions need to be made through that process, and tell me what the benefits are to help with the prioritisation. So I'm handed a document for a process that the business already said, this is how many hours a week it takes. This is structured data. So by teaching them to know what to look for, they actually help facilitate the information to us. And it brings them a part of it. And it's really cool. And it's open to a debate. And one of the other questions, James got asked is around, are jobs going to change? So in the last 3 months, we've trained 5 internal people up to be developers. So they're going to be champions in their own areas to develop under the guidance of my team. And that's really, really cool, because when you've got an SME who can develop, that's just gold. Okay, so it's really important. So that's where the roles start changing, and you'll find these, these internal resources that really get it. Really smart people have come through, and they may have been a Python developer previously who have got an interest in this, or it could be one of your data science team. It could be one of your IT guys who want a bit of a change in career direction. You'll find people internally. And this is where it's important to have a strategy of having a core team, an extended team, and an augmented option, because in organisations you'll have peaks and troughs through the year. So you do rely on partners to help you through that. So it's really important to have that balance. But it's also important to have partners there too, because you may come across a use case that you haven't come across, you haven't got a specialty in, and you can leverage those companies to come in your organisation and help out. So it's that balance. So governance is really important. Apart from the fortnightly steering committee, we actually have a sub-working group that we meet fortnightly as well. And then that's the next level down, just to make sure we're all clear who's doing what, when and how, and also to have that debate around other processes or other use cases that we may want to put forward to the steering committee. So once again, it's a team sport. So both those forums are represented with people from all across the organisation, including marketing and HR, right? Yep. So it's still centralised, right? So the people who, for example, the guy in the data team who's doing the build, he's actually coming to the team to do the build into the team. So, we could be supported by the more experienced developers. We have that subgroup because they've got an interest on that at that next level down and more into the detail. And we have some really good debates and get a really good clear line before we go to the steering committee and say, look, we are all recommending this process is the next one it should go. So rather than a decision being made up top, we're actually having that good debate and fleshing that out of why we should be doing this. What's the benefits for the customer? What's the benefit for the organisation, for the brand, for your efficiencies, or is it a risk item? So we just had one a couple of weeks ago that hit our table that's got no FTE benefit, but it's a risk item. So from that point of view, and that risk also is possibly brain damage. So right straight up in there, and we kicked it off immediately with one of the guys from the service desk that completed the development course. And it was really good. The reason why we chose him to do it is because it was in that domain. So it's leveraging that domain knowledge as well. Process selection. So usually when I have a look at process selection, I basically go through and have a look and rank things from volume down, volume and time taken, right? And then do the assessment in the first lot around how much of it's structured and unstructured. Right, what decisions is there any decisions? So anything that needs to be pushed out to an exception. And I do that top level view first, and then we get a prioritisation. And then part of that assessment is to do a high level estimate on build days. So then I have a look at value of build days versus days saved or time saved by automating a process. And that brings us out a priority list. Right, and then we do another look around complexity of deployment. How much of a change management exercise is it? And don't get me wrong, when I talk about change management, it is fundamentally the most important thing in this whole journey. I've always said to people, when you're starting to estimate what resources you need to deliver this, whatever you put down at change management, go at the back and have a smoke and come back in and double it. Okay, because the technology, regardless of the technology platform you go to, the technology is actually the basic part. It's that change part. But it's also getting the people involved in the journey that will help that. And this is why we took the point of going out, educating them what it is, and for them to come up with the ideas and give them that structure, because they own it. And one of the things we've done in this is when we've brought in a bot, we name our robots. And we get the staff to name the robots in their area. The robot's got a first name and last name. And the robots are in our HR system and they report to me. Okay? And I do this for a number of reasons. A, every quarter when IT do a review of who's got system access and who's in the HR system, and if you're not in the HR system, they wipe the accesses, that's going to be problematic for the bot, right? So that's one reason. The second reason is we've got processes that email customers out, okay? And so the bot has a name, a corporate name, and will email out to a customer. Who in this room has had an email that says, please don't respond to this email, right? You can respond back to our bots, right? So when the response comes back to the bot will determine whether it can answer that response. If it can't, it pushes it to someone in the team. So that's our customer experience. Our customers feel like they're being serviced by a person and not an automated service. But it's quick turnaround times. So this is where, to me, protecting the customer experience is really important. Now, once again, if the bot can't handle it, we've got a mechanism to go in a timely manner to be pushed straight back out to the teams to be able to be serviced. Also, naming the bot brings that emotional connection back to the team that we're augmenting the workforce with the technology. And I went to a team meeting the other day, and they're talking and naming their bot, and they talk about the stats that what the bot's done for the week, right, which is really cool. That helps with that change process. And the reason why we operationalised our program rather than putting it through a project was really important strategically. And this is where I also feel a lot of companies are getting hung up because they're creating projects, right? There's a couple of problems with creating projects, in my opinion. It's not saying it's right, is that when you put a project in, you put a project manager and a team in, A, that hurts your ROI, right? But B, you have to think about where the blockages have been with technology deployments in organisations over the last 100 years. You get a BA, and I'm not criticising BAs or project managers, I used to be one. They go into a team and say, this is how I'm automating your process, and this is what it's going to look like. And the business unit's going, well, you don't know anything about my process. Why are you making those decisions? Right? And that's already starts that resistance to change of technology or a change in process. So by not having it in project mode, by having it in BAU mode, by involving the SMEs and being reliant on the SMEs to be that pivotal point, helps with your change journey. But also, one of the things that I see companies do, pilots or POCs or whatever, and get stopped is because then they're looking for that next round of funding, right? I don't understand, and maybe I'm biased because I love the technology, why would you do a POC? There's enough evidence out in the marketplace, enough material, enough site visits you can do to show it works. Your first implementation should make sure that you've got your technology right and your infrastructure right. That's why that should be your first point. Do your first process and make sure everything's working well. Then you can start running. So there, the world according to me, why I believe so many people have started with a pilot and stopped and haven't progressed. Integration in IT, and this is where I was talking about more, we're integrated with IT, we follow the ITIL processes. And another reason why I need IT involved is that they have the service desk. So if there is a problem, I need them to respond, I need them to communicate to the teams. And one of the good things how we've designed the bots is if the bot goes and does a process and the system's not available, they'll actually raise a JIRA ticket and send a screenshot to the service desk saying, this system that the bot's trying to log into is not working. And it also sends it to the business to say there's a problem there. And this is where using the exceptions coming out of the robots really you can speed up those processes. You talk about adoption of technology. The guy from the service desk actually, after doing module 4 of the course, turned around and automated his health checks on a couple of systems he does every morning. Fantastic. So there's a lot of different use cases for these. Process optimization. Okay, so another question I got before, do you fix a process before you automate it? Yeah. When you start looking at a process, if there's stuff that's just dumb, yeah, remove it. Right? To me, bots don't care if it's a good process or bad process. So automate it. Right? If I can get rid of 40% or 50%, by the automation and get that done fast, I will. And then I bring the process excellence people in to have a look at why the bot can't handle the rest, and then start doing improvement to those processes to get greater throughput. Another thing we do, we look forward. So in one particular area, we've got 14 processes we're going to automate. How we structured that as a priority, we had 5 that had a lot of unstructured data and it was a bit ugly. So what we've done, whilst my developers started with the first lot of processes, we've started, creating web forms and all those type of activities. So by the time we get to that, we've got far more structure, we'll get far more greater input. But as you know, by putting the web forms structure in place, removing having the data entry to the teams, you're already bringing forward your benefit as well. So there's stuff that you can get the foresight to clean it up. The reason why I wanted to do it before the developer got there is I didn't want her being held up. She's now got a clean run right through. So it's also having a look forward. Another important thing around looking at your processes is that what I love about this technology, you can build once and use. So we've got use cases that we built them for a particular department. So that process there, we're able to go turn it to another channel and it's already built. So it actually starts facilitating and helping you self-service channel on the web. Because the use case was when a customer rang up or sent an email, right, which we automated. So that process, which is exactly the same if the person went online, they could actually do it online. Same bot process, you're just pointing it at a different channel. So, you can use that one build in a number of different ways. And it's also having a look at what that looks like. So I've got, my 3-month plan, my 6-month plan, and my 12-month plan. And some of these things are adding up to something bigger later on, which may remove a lot of calls, which is really, really important. Because that's opening up another channel to improve the customer experience. Right, cycle. Quick meeting with the business, sit down, explain to them how the technology works, give them examples. One of the things that we do when we go into our development and test cycles, we video what the bots do. So we video them and we play them back to the staff. And it's fantastic because that gets them to understand what we do and how we do it. And it's also good from an education point of view, and it's also good from a testing point of view. Because quite often, we build a process and we video it and we can actually give it to the SME. And they can actually watch the video, make sure it's working as planned. Sometimes we have to slow down the video because the bot works too fast. But I'm not criticising the robot for that. And then they can have a look at the outcomes manually to see whether the right outcomes are actually delivered. So the video is really, really important, part of the toolkit. So sit down and have a meeting with them, go through and have a look at their problem areas. When dealing with frontline guys, they'll tell you what drives them nuts. They'll tell you the good things about their job, the bad thing about their job. Okay, so you start getting insights very, very quickly around what you should be targeting. So do the assessment, as I spoke about before, build a readiness, agree a success criteria. So there was one particular process that we had to look at the best person in the organisation and what they achieved. That became our benchmark. So when we're doing testing, to me, if we didn't achieve equal what he was getting, we need to go back and have a look at what we're doing. So agree your benchmarks. Pipeline prioritisation, I spoke about in the steering committee, really, really important. And be fluid with your pipeline. Have a champion challenger. You may have a really good process you're going to kick off in 2 weeks, but someone may have found a beautiful big nugget and you bring in. So have that flexibility. Follow the principles of design, build and test. Test your stuff before you put it into production. If you don't, you're putting more risk to your organisation. Testing doesn't mean slowing it down. As I said, video it, get the SME to look at it, right? And when you put it in production, babysit it for the first day to be sure. Protect the customer experience. Look at your benefit realisation and roadmap. I've got targets every quarter, right? Whether it's FTE reduction or revenue or improved customer experience, right? and have that built in with the business. So my targets, for example, FTE reduction, that actually sits in the scorecards of the business unit as well. Once again, team sport. And I'm really lucky I work for an organisation that understands the beauty of working as a team. And we do it really well. And we share the goal, we share the outcome. It's really important. And manage it going forward. One of the things with bots is that people will make changes to their systems that you don't know about. You've got to be quick enough to pick those up and be able to fix them. So, for example, how we've designed our bot, if someone's made a change to a website that we're talking to, it'll actually throw that exception, take a photo and take a picture, screenshot it, and send it back to the team to look at and be able to move around. You've got to maintain bots. You've got to keep checking its code. It's like a staff member. You've still got to coach, lead, and mentor a bot. Don't set and forget. Okay? Oh, here it is. Yeah, so crucial. You need to spend time looking at your processes, looking at your bot, how it's performing. We have a review every day on how it's performing, right, and how long it's taking. And we have a look and we review that on a daily basis. And if need to be, we review that with the business. Here's a case study of one that we put into production fairly quickly. So this is a process where if you go for a loan at, say, Westpac, and they say to you, sorry, we can't process your loan because there's a default on your credit rating with ANZ, and you go, I don't know why. And you ring ANZ and say, hi, I've got a default with you, stopping me from getting a loan. And they look at your account and they say, oh, sorry, we actually put it on the wrong person. So the process is that ANZ will contact us. We'll then remove that default on their advice. And then we'll send an email out to Westpac saying, the default's been removed for that loan application. So previously, before we went in, the problem was it was a 3-day SLA, okay, to turn that around. So you had to do the removal, and then you had to do the email out. So labour-intensive, manual process, SLAs. It was prone to errors as well. And our business was only Monday to Friday, 8 to 5, and this is a full manual process. So we automated it. So when we get emails in from the institution, or they come in, and the bot will grab that, go into the system, remove the default, and then turn around and email out straight away. So we've effectively got rid of a 3-day SLA, which we did get complaints sometimes from customers that were too slow. So we actually removed that 3-day SLA to real time and 24/7. And we've taken out 100% of human intervention. And we were able to do this in a couple of weeks. And, it was really cool. The people who were actually facilitating and doing this job as a full-time job, when we turned it on, you could actually see them just walking around because they had nothing to do, which was great. In the first week, because once again, we babysit it for the first week just in case. And now they're doing more meaningful tasks in that business unit. In other areas where they're being impacted by volume. So it worked really well. And, the manager of the area is over the moon. And she's an evangelist for us now. And so, it's no, you don't have to be a rocket science workout that we're getting a lot more use cases from that area, because it works and they're excited. And now they've put someone forward from their team to learn how to be a developer. So, once again, team sport, get the culture going. Change management is the key. Technology's the easy bit. And involving everybody across the organisation and making sure people know what their roles and responsibilities are and get buy-in. And once again, I'm really lucky. I've got a really good CEO who sets a good strategic outline, and a good team around him who are all moving in the same direction. Talking to a lot of colleagues I've got across different organisations who have started it, and this was a really good bit of research that I found, and I suppose this to me made it real about what's holding up the development. The fear of the unknown, all the risks and liabilities and security. Whenever you talk about RPA, your security guys are all over you, right? Making sure it's secure. How do I know the bots aren't going to go and do what they want to do? Are the passwords protected and all those type of things? So it's really important, but it's also knowing, that the product you've got, what are those mechanisms? Where is that protection? What is the encryption levels? What's the security standards? But this actually really resonates to me, what I hear in the industry. Vendor strategy, integration complexity, confusion over vendor offerings. You'll have 3 vendors come and promise you exactly the same thing. And depending on your use cases, there are differences. Now, if you have a look at, James put up, UiPath, Blue Prism Automation Anywhere, they're 3 fantastic companies and they've got real good products. But depending on your particular use cases, you need to have a look at how you want to use it, because there are slight differences in the offerings. So you need to make sure you choose the right one for your offerings. Okay? Strategy, and this is where I think a lot of things stop at a pilot. Where is that strategy? Okay? Finding use cases, I don't understand that one. If anyway, it baffles me. If you can't find a use case, it means you've finished everything. Either that or you don't have an organisation, so there's no processes. Finding funding is always a challenge. And I think, a lot of pilots do stop at that because they're waiting for a funding life cycle. And that's why I'm a big fan of operationalise it, so you're not looking for funding. The only time you should be looking for funding is if you're wanting to increase your output or increase your delivery, it goes look for more funding to then augment, to bring more people in. That's the only time. Governance issues and lack of staff skills. So, yeah, I thought that was quite interesting. Cool.